European engagement with India assumed significance during the 3 centuries old Mughal rule. It started with a few travelers, priests and merchants seeking to explore an unexplored subcontinent. Over the years, these became the stepping stone for a full-fledged expansion by the major colonial powers. Thus, the first series of accounts about Mughal India were by travelers and priests. In these accounts, first-hand experience and insight blend liberally with bazaar gossip and rumor. In spite of their inaccuracy and bias, these accounts prove to be a valuable source to historians of Mughal India.
We know that a large number of European travelers have come to India during the Mughal period and have left their accounts. Along with them, we have a certain number of officials and demi-officials of the European companies who often wrote as travelers, but were mostly the merchants and officials of the European companies established in India. These European companies, roughly from the end of the 15th century, as we know, Vasco da Gama of Portugal came in 1498. They flourished in the 17th century and later on in the 18th, ultimately turning one of these companies into a colonial country. Now here today we shall see a little bit briefly the documents left behind by these European companies and now scattered in different archives of Europe as well as in India. There were several companies, European companies, but we take the Portuguese who came first, then the English and Dutch who came almost simultaneously, and the French. Among them, the Portuguese documents are important in their own rights, but as company documents, those are not very important for two reasons. One is that when Mughal Empire was re-established by Humayun after 1550, the Portuguese power was almost on the decline, and as such, the second reason is that there was very little linkage between Portuguese in India and the home countries. And as we shall see, that this linkage is one of the most important factors for us, since these give the sources which we call factory records for the study of the history of the Mughal in India. The English and the Dutch came in the early 17th century. At first they went to Southeast Asia to look for spices, but then they found that the Southeast Asia do not have money circulation. It is not a monetary economy. So what they did was they came to India, bought clothes, took this to Southeast Asia and got this exchanged. Gradually, they became interested in the purchase of cloth and sending them straight to home in Europe. The Portuguese were mostly interested in spices, particularly in Malabar and other places, also in some parts of Southeast Asia. But by 1640, the Portuguese power in Southeast Asia was broken and the Dutch had taken over. So it is the English and the Dutch whose records were the most important factors for us for the study of the history of the Mughals in the 17th century till others come in. The French came in 1666. Their company was formed in 1664 in Paris, and they came in 1666, established at Surat. And then we have the series of documents from the French till they continued almost till 1947 or 52 as a matter of fact. These documents, which we call factory records in short, were of various kinds. One, the most important kind was the letters written by these factors from India to their home countries. Unfortunately, these were not available in a series types, in the sense that chronologically sometimes these are missing, chronologically some of these letters are not found. As a result, sometimes we get the reference of an incident, but we do not know the result because the letters are missing. But even then, these constitute the most important source of the factory records for the study of the Mughals in India. The second type is the reports, and as the French call the memoirs, written by their factors in India to the home authorities. These are many, but these are not on particular issues. These are mostly on the commodities or on places or on the method of purchase, the prices, etc. The third type, which are also important but mostly found in English and in Dutch records, not much in French, but the factory consultations, which we called, the meeting of the members of the council of the factory in India. For example, the members of the council of Calcutta, they meet, they make certain decisions, the resolutions, only those resolutions are written down, but these tell us what the issues are, on what they are fighting. Most of them they were fighting most of the time. So, all these are recorded. So, we call this factory consultations. And finally, we have the letters of the home authorities. The home authorities, either it is Amsterdam or London or Paris, they write to their factories and give orders. They send also the pattern of cloth to be required, the kind of investment that has to be made, the way it has to be made, and so on and so forth. Now, in these various kinds, the chief feature lies in the fact that these are not political conscious letters. In the sense, the politics is there. I would not say that it is not there. There are certain references of revolts, for example. But the kind of political life that we know, that is missing. Here they mostly deal with their problems, that is the purchase, to send these goods back, to get their reports and so on and so forth. The principal feature of the European records, irrespective of languages, is the problem of purchase. In India, whatever one wants to buy as an European company, they would have to bring money, which we call silver bullion, as well as some foreign currency, get it converted into Mughal rupees into the Mughal mint, and then advance this money to a broker or to a big merchant or a group of merchants. Now, this is called the Dadni system, D-A-D-N-I, Dadni system, and the merchants are called the Dadni merchants. They take advance and they take also the kind of cloth, the pattern of cloth, the sample, that according to which these are to be fulfilled, these orders to be fulfilled. Now, the problem here lies in two. First is that this sample is sent along with the bullion, silver bullion mostly, gold also came, but mostly silver, copper came, but much less. Mainly silver bullion and foreign currency from Europe, and these are to be converted into Mughal rupees. Both the English and the Dutch companies face the problem of the conversion, because as we all know, the ships in those days used to come with the monsoon wind. They used to arrive around September, October, and their departure time is also fixed, in the sense that they would have to take the return monsoon wind, which is from December to February, at the latest till the middle of March. So, the goods must be at the factory before the ship arrives and must be laden into the ship, examined before that, seen before that, sampled before that, put all kinds of stamp, and then passed through the customs office of the Mughals and then put into the ship. Now, therefore, if the ship brings the money and if this money has to be converted into the Mughal rupee, then there is practically very little time to give advance, and there is very little possibility of getting the goods. So, one has to make either a spot purchase or to buy 1 year in advance. English and Dutch, they had plenty of money to make this kind of advance purchase, that is, next year's purchase is already done. But the French did not have the money, and they had to make the spot purchase, as a result of which they had to pay a higher price. According to the French letters, they are not losing much, because if you keep the goods in the factory, it means that your investment is tied up, which means that you are going to pay the interest of the investment. In reality, nobody is paying the interest, but theoretically there is a kind of a loss, as the French tried to show. This did not convince the home authorities at all. Now, in these letters of the English and the Dutch, one could see the kind of problems they faced in the mint, which sometimes take 2 months, sometimes take 3 months, and sometimes even more, depending on the mint master, who may be purchased, so to speak, in modern parlance, by the country merchants to delay the minting of the money of the European companies. After that, the question comes of the examination of the goods. Now, the factory which I have said, factory records, this factory is not the factory in the modern sense of the term. It does not manufacture anything. It is actually a 2-story building in most of the cases, with a very big hall in the ground floor, and in this ground floor the goods are brought, and then these are examined, and if these goods do not tally with the sample, these are rejected. Now, the merchant is becoming clever. So, what they do is they bring the goods at the last moment, so that there is not much of time for examination, and therefore, there is not much time for rejection either, because once the good is rejected, it is very difficult to sell this. Particularly this is true in case of the French, because their loom is of different kinds. And because of this changing of the looms, that the weavers are not willing to get these rejected goods back and put it into the proper shape.
Officials of European companies often wrote as travelers about their experience in Mughal India. One of the first Europeans to consolidate their power was the Portuguese. The Portuguese were followed by the English, Dutch, and the French. The French were the last to come. They came in 1666. Among the sources are letters written by officers from India to their home country. In addition are reports and memoirs written by officials that give insight on indigenous trade practices, among other things. The proceedings of meetings held by European officers serving in India, also called factory consultations, are an important source. Similarly, orders from home country to officials in India regarding mercantile affairs are also useful to historians. The letters written by Europeans throw light on the examination of goods, methods of purchase, and various problems arising out of the process. The letters also talk about rules and regulations followed by Mughal officers while dealing with the European merchants. The economic historians of Mughal India get a lot of data about the prices of commodities and the nature of markets from the European letters.
From the very beginning of the letters, of the purchase, of the examination, we see that they are having all these kind of problems. These letters also show the kind of attitude of the Mughal government in different places. And the attitude of the Mughal officials is not the same everywhere. In some places, they are very stiff, in some places they are not. But in one point they are almost unanimous. That is, the company willing to pay the recognized tax, which is for the European companies roughly about 5% ad valorem, that is on the price of the goods. Now, this is available, this facility is available, provided the company has a farman, that is the order of the king, or the parwana, that is the order of the provincial governor, or the sanad, that is sanad of the Dewan, that is the order of the financial minister of the province. Now, the problem here is that the farman given by the emperor is valid while he is living. Once he died and a new emperor comes in, then you require a new farman. And to get this new farman is a very, very difficult task. One would have to go to Delhi, one would have to give a lot of presents to all the mansabdars, big mansabdars, etc., etc., etc. There is a very good record of 1717, when the English had gone to the Emperor Farrukh Shah to get the farman, which is called the Farman of 1717, by which the English were allowed to have free trade only after paying 3,000 rupees a year. They were also given the right to purchase 34 villages, around 24 parganas, but Murshid Quli Khan, the provincial governor, he did not allow the English company to buy. He therefore organized the zamindars of those villages almost in a kind of a unanimous league, secretly of course, to refuse the offer of the English company, and the English could not get it before 1757. So, in these letters we have these difficulties, these problems and so on. But apart from this, The most important one for the economic historians of Mughal India is the detailed information on the prices as well as on the markets and the commodities. Which are the prices, for example, of indigo, of particular type of cloth, muslin of Dhaka, for example, or coarse cloth like garas or sanas. These details are there in the letters in year after year. In English letters, these are much more, because the French letters are missing from 1724 to 1730 something, 29, something like that. These are not there. But despite those, we get the prices, we get the type of commodities available, we get the price, the attitude of the merchants, even the names of the merchants, what they are doing, whether they are opposing or not, but very little of political information, as I have said earlier. Now, apart from these prices and commodities and etc., one could see the attitude of the highest Mughal authority towards the European companies. This could be seen from the farmans, as I have said. Some of these farmans are there in the factory accords, mostly certified and attested copies made in the 19th century. The English, for example, lost the Farman of 1717 immediately after that, but they could get the certified and attested copy from the Qazi of Murshidabad, but others are not so lucky. We have several Farmans, and then we have the Parwanas also, governed by the provincial governors, like Nawab Ibrahim Khan giving the Parwana to the French in 1695. These Parwanas or Sanads of the Diwans, these could be given only after the Farman has been given. That is, the emperor has given the order, only then they give this kind of Parwanas or Sanads. For example, after the Farman of 1717, we have the Sanad of the Diwan endorsing all these in financial terms. The Farman of 1717, for example, has the Sanad of the Diwan endorsing this. These Farman, Parwanas and Sanads, which I had referred to, and as well as certain others, are available in the European factory accords. The original Persian, it's given in original in Persian all the time. The original Persian is there, and along with that, a translation in case of the English, English translation, in case of the French, a French translation, and in case of the Dutch translation. These translations are always there. Therefore, what is important to us is that we do see the kind of attitude of the Mughal government, and on seeing this one would say that the Mughal government was quite liberal in their attitude to the European companies, in contrast to what the English historian said, that the Mughals were very much oppressive towards the Europeans. As a matter of fact, the factory records continually complain of the oppression of the Nawabs, on the oppression of the Mughal officials and so on. In certain cases, the demand of the custom officials of the Mughals for a very high rate was totally justified. For example, in case of the French, they did not have the Farman of the emperor, neither the Parwana nor the Sanad, but they wanted to pay only the 5% and continued the trade, but the Mughal custom officials refused to do it. what they demanded was that these European companies should pay like any other merchant, since they do not have the kind of order of the higher authorities. So, therefore, the factory letters, whatever they are writing, are not always accurate, neither they could understand the attitude of the Mughal government fully. In certain cases, these letters do not speak the truth. For example, in case of the English merchants, those who are under the company, they used to do the private trade. But in the company letters, they always maintain nothing of the sort. I mean, there is no kind of reference to that kind of thing. The French were not allowed till 1724 to have private trade. But after that, at least the French, what they did was to take the company into this kind of private trade by making an association of the trade in their private, of the trade of these officials in their private trading concerns. For example, Duplex, while he was at Pondicherry, he had seen the formation of private trading societies with the French officials, with the Tamil merchants, and with the company. But in case of the English, this kind of association did not include the company, excepting at a very later stage. So, therefore, the English company officials, English company merchants, always tried to hide the fact that they were making a lot of money by private trading and so on and so forth. So, the factory records, as we know, are important to us. It is important because of the study of the economic history, because of the prices of the commodities, because of the trading patterns, because of the shipping, the condition of the ports, etc. But these do not always tell us the real story of the officials of the European companies, their activities behind the back of the company. These remain still unknown, almost unknown to us.
Officials of European companies often wrote as travelers about their experience in Mughal India. One of the first Europeans to consolidate their power was the Portuguese. The Portuguese were followed by the English, Dutch, and the French. The French were the last to come. They came in 1666. Among the sources are letters written by officers from India to their home country. In addition are reports and memoirs written by officials that give insight on indigenous trade practices, among other things. The proceedings of meetings held by European officers serving in India, also called factory consultations, are an important source. Similarly, orders from home country to officials in India regarding mercantile affairs are also useful to historians. The letters written by Europeans throw light on the examination of goods, methods of purchase, and various problems arising out of the process. The letters also talk about rules and regulations followed by Mughal officers while dealing with the European merchants. The economic historians of Mughal India get a lot of data about the prices of commodities and the nature of markets from the European letters. These letters also speak about high-handed attitudes and arbitrariness of Mughal officials while dealing with various European traders. The letters of the Europeans are usually silent about the private trade carried on by the officials. The factory records thus do not give a full picture of the Europeans and their various activities.